Hi everyone. The purpose of today's video is to talk about the research proposal that's due at the end of the semester. Um, Most of you are in the process of completing the final set of worksheets, 7 through 10. And once you've done that, you can start to use this outline or suggested outline to complete the final proposal using the prompts it contained. And the worksheets themselves provide most of the answers, although you will have to flesh it out in some cases and convert it into a narrative format. So looking at the very top of this sheet of paper, which is also listed in the final week of the iLearn site, along with several examples of research proposals, um, I'd like you to amend the expected length. The listed length is 15 to 20 double-space pages. I would like to amend that to 15 to 18. So at the very outside, your paper should be 18 pages, and that includes also a list of references or bibliography, as well as any appendices. Please make sure to use 12-point font and include page numbers. There's no need to include a title page. You can just start directly on Roman numeral 1, which is the introduction. So the description of general research area is can come from the first set of worksheets in terms of identifying perhaps the problem, as well as some context or background that would be relevant to your proposed study. But I caution you not to spend too much time building the background. Most students have a difficult time understanding the idea that in proposals, you have to be very direct about what it is that you want to do. So it would not be inappropriate to start a proposal with the following sentence. The purpose of this proposal is to address, and then you would include your research question. And then you can step back and build up the background and the context if necessary. In other words, the proposal is not meant to be a mystery novel. You shouldn't spend several pages building up to the purpose of the proposal. The idea is for you to be very direct as well as succinct in presenting both the statement of the problem in terms of the research area as well as your question. So items A, B, C, and D all come directly from the research worksheets 1 through 4. And item D in particular is an area that you can expand on based on having perused the research literature. Certainly the justification is very important, which is why you're proposing the topic as far as why it's important, as well as the rationale or significance, which deals with what it might contribute. So justification deals with the why, and the significance, which you can also talk about, deals with what it might contribute. Now the next section deals with the literature that you have been perusing over the course of the semester. Already you've identified 2 empirical studies for the second set of worksheets. By the end of the semester and for this proposal, I would like you to identify about 7 to 10 empirical studies. I'm going to amend that and not say that they have to all be empirical studies. So roughly 40% of them should be empirical studies. The remainder can be books. They can be theoretical opinion pieces. They can be concept papers, literature reviews, meta-analytical studies. They don't have to be in primary empirical research. So let's say that you have identified 7 sources. Roughly 3 of them, about 40%, should be empirical studies. So most of you have identified 2. You would have to get 1 more. And then in the process of presenting your annotated bibliography, I'd like you to give an overview of what the studies look like. And then basically present the annotated bibliography by topic. So some of you have written literature reviews or are thinking of writing a literature review. Usually the annotated bibliography is the step before writing an actual literature review. which is an assessment of a body or bodies of literature that bears on a particular question. An annotated bibliography is just a list of sources with abstracts or summaries of each source in that list. They can be organized alphabetically or by topic. In this case, I'm asking you to identify them by topic and then simply include the citation of the article as well as just a quick summary. And writing a summary can be very challenging because you want to include the information, the basic information, in your own words. If you have questions related to the annotated bibliography, have a look at the examples that are both in the course reader as well as the 3 that are posted at the very bottom of the iLearn site. Looking at the examples, and again, the expectation is an annotated bibliography. You don't need to write a literature review, which is much more time consuming. If you have additional questions, please post them in the instructor forum, as I'm sure that other students may have similar questions and will benefit from your asking that. Roman numeral 3, procedures, deals with the last half of the worksheets in terms of getting very detailed about the study procedures, how you plan to conduct the study in terms of how you'll collect the data, who will collect the data, over what period, and also discussing any limitations you think you might encounter with those procedures. Section B deals with the population and sampling, which maps onto the worksheets that you completed for the second set, as well as instrumentation. Now, if you are using a pre-existing tool, meaning one that has been used widely, then there's no need for you to include an example of it. Just want you to refer to it and then include evidence of validity and reliability for it. Now, if you are developing your own data collection tool or instrument, then I would like you to include a draft or append a draft to your proposal with 7 to 10 items. So let's say you're planning to do a questionnaire. I'd like you to identify or list 7 to 10 questions, and they should be substantive questions, not demographic ones, for example, age or occupation or income, but questions that really tie to your main research question. It's also true for an interview protocol. I would like you to develop 7 to 10 items. And again, this is just a draft. So if you have any questions about that, again, please pose questions in the instructor forum, or you can email me directly. Now, validity, we've talked about in several ways: instrument validity, internal validity, and external validity. Now, I'd like you to talk about ways that you can increase the validity of your study design. So most of you will talk about content-related evidence of validity for data collection tools that you've created. And I'm hoping that some of you will talk about triangulation in terms of validity, as far as ways that you can try to corroborate findings from a primary instrument or a primary group of people, for example. So discussion of validity is very important in the proposal. External validity deals with generalizability, and again, ties to responses from the worksheet that you completed. And then threats to the validity of your proposed study, item F, is covered in this set of worksheets that's going to be due this week. And then finally, projected data analysis also is an area that's not actually required, but I would like you to provide some basic information about how you would analyze your data in your proposal. So most of you that are doing qualitative research will talk about coding and then thematic analysis as the way that you would analyze qualitative data. And for quantitative, it will depend, and we certainly will discuss this in the last weeks of class. Again, if you have questions that's specific to your study, you can email me and we can talk about them. And also during the lab that we will have the week before the final proposal is due. The last section talks about expected findings, conclusions, and recommendations. And I would like you also to include a few sentences about any limitations that you see in your study. Over the course of the semester, we've read several journal articles that various groups have presented and critiqued. And I would like you to then take those skills that you've gotten from reviewing these empirical studies and turning it onto your own design. So most research proposals don't identify limitations because it would be akin to shooting yourself in the foot. Not a good idea. Um, but for the purposes of this class, the proposal is a means for your showing me what you've learned. And certainly we've spent a lot of time talking about limitations in research and social science research in particular. So I know there's, um, well, most of you know that there's no such thing as a perfect study, and certainly not an ideal perfect design for a research study. So I would like you to consider that in terms of critiquing your own proposal in a few sentences. And at the very end, I would like you to include a list of references and also any appendices if applicable. If you are creating your own data collection tool, I'd like you to include a page of that, just a one-pager. And again, if you're using a pre-existing instrument, there's no need to include a copy of it. Just refer to it within the text or body of your proposal. Lastly, I would like you to review the 3 examples of student proposals at the very bottom of the iLearn site. The first one received an A grade. The second one missed the mark a little bit, received a B+. And the final one, which is an example of teacher research, was completed over 5 weeks and received an A as well. They're all strong proposals. I'm hoping to give you some idea of areas, especially in the second proposal, where misunderstanding could lead to lowering your final grade. But most people do very well in this course. They usually get some sort of an A or high B, just because most of the feedback that I'm providing is qualitative. And the goal is for you to identify, is for you to write a proposal which is based on the worksheets, which you know are not graded, but developing your ideas through them and incorporating my feedback, and then taking the responses from your worksheets and placing them into the sort of a narrative format using these guidelines is really the final product for this class.